Hey everybody, welcome back to Keeping It Cento. Today we have on a really exciting guest. We have a period coach for our period episode, and we're going to get into a lot of things that women struggle with when it comes to their period. So PCOS, cycle syncing, how to manage PMS, which is something that we struggle a lot with. So we're very excited to jump right into it. Her name is Emily Todd. She's from the UK, and let's go. So Emily, thank you so much from joining on all the way in the UK. So we introduced you briefly in introduction, but to get it from your words, your perspective, who are you? What inspired you to start working with women and helping them improve their menstrual cycle and becoming an educator for women on cycles, on their periods? Just give us a brief kind of, I guess, synopsis of that.
So I'm Emily. I am a menstrual health coach and feminine embodiment coach as well. And I fully qualified last March, but I've been in this space for a couple of years now. And I would say I honestly have always had a passion for women's health. I've always had a passion for empowerment. And I think that came from just personal health issues that I struggled with myself. So it really started at an early age. I had really bad IBS. I think a lot of women suffer with this. It's very, very common, gut health issues. And that also really correlates with period struggles as well. And that was something that happened to me. I was put on the pill, which is like so many women out there at 13 years old. So that was to essentially mask my hormonal acne, which I think a lot of people can relate to, because so many women I know and I've worked with, get put on the pill and really at such an early age. And that was at 13. And when I kind of got older, and it was I think it was about 18, until I kind of came off the pill, I had such issues with my hormones and had such awful imbalances in my body because I'd been on that for so long. And when I came off, I was at uni, I was 18, I wasn't looking after myself at all. And so my health just kind of got worse. And I think the final straw for me, and when I decided to fully take my health into my own hands, was when I was having quite a few colonoscopies and endoscopies at the hospital, trying to figure out what was so wrong with my gut. And I remember going into the hospital and the doctor's office, and I was ready for my test results. And I just sat down and he looked at me why are you here again? And I was you don't know why I'm here? It's I've been going through this traumatic experience. And since then I was this is just, this wasn't working for me. And so I took my health into my own hands, went down a holistic health route, and really haven't looked back ever since I decided to go into training as an actual coach. It completely changed my life, tracking, working with my cycle. And my health is totally changed now.
That's really relatable to me, actually, because I actually struggled with IBS too for a really long time. I also went for colonoscopies and endoscopies, and they were kind of just you have IBS, and it's just slapping. It was almost I think about it as just covering up for something that they can't actually find. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They don't know what's actually wrong. So they're you just have IBS. The colonoscopy didn't find anything. You have IBS.
Yeah.
And I personally didn't go on any sort of pill. And I don't know if that was good or bad. That was maybe because my doctor never talked to me about it. I actually didn't even know. But the whole IBS conversation and not knowing what's actually going on with your health, and I'm not shitting on doctors. I'm just saying, I feel women's bodies in general aren't studied enough. They're not correlating IBS symptoms with oh, maybe it has something to do with their cycle or anything like that. So I have had a very similar, that's super, super relatable. So thank you for sharing that.
I think so many women can relate to the IBS. I think a lot of us go through that.
Almost everyone, yeah.
Yeah, really, really common. And with doctors, I think it's you do feel I mean, they are trained for masking symptoms essentially, and healing, and they're not trained for healing deep root causes. And I think so many of us just get palmed off and we get let down. And that happened to me so frequently when I was younger. And the same situation is being put on the pill, it's a mask. like putting a
Yep.
child on it at that age. It's because you want to
Yeah.
like shut down their hormones because there's issues, but the root cause is like really getting to that like root and using like holistic health to actually uncover that. And that's just not what they're trained to do. And so we continue on our lives thinking this is the way, this is the only
Yep.
solution. And actually, you know, it's really not.
And I also feel like periods for some people and cycles could be scary and overwhelming. I know for me it is. Like, I've had this conversation with my friend, actually, even just yesterday, where she was like, "Oh, I kind of just let my period take over me, like when I'm on my period, and I just kind of like go with the flow of it, and I just let it. I eat fast food, and now like won't work out because I'm on my period. Kind of like we use it. I'm not gonna say it as an excuse because it is something that can, be detrimental to like your mental health and to make activities less enjoyable. But I feel like oftentimes as women, like we let it take over, and we don't really know how to work with it. We kind of just ignore it and like, okay, it's just a cycle, it's going to go away. Like we don't really use or know, or at least I don't really know the tools to help me when I'm in that phase of my cycle, because I don't want my period to just like take over my life. I don't want it to be like that. I want to still feel like me and do things that I love to do, but in just different ways because it's different cycles. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited to jump more into that. But before we get more into the conversation, you posted something I really loved, and I kind of want to get our three answers and the
Yes.
viewers' answers as well. So you posted, when do you feel most like you as a woman? And I
Mm.
want to ask you that first, and then
Yeah.
Sam, and then I'll answer. But I love that question. I'd love to hear your response to that.
Amazing. No, I also love this question, and it's really great because it actually leads on to some like really great education. And I taught this in a masterclass recently. But so when I feel most like me as a woman and when I feel most as a woman, it is probably when I am either like indulging in self-care, like looking after
Mm.
myself, nurturing myself. I always think about cooking, like when I'm cooking
Mm,
for people, like for myself, like
mm-hmm,
nourishing myself and the people around me, and also nurturing other people. So like when I'm looking
Mm.
after somebody else, I feel like a woman when I'm doing those things. But
mm-hmm.
self-care, self-pleasure, all of those things that make you truly feel for me. Um, but what about you guys?
Um, I was gonna say a similar thing. I feel like, just to preface my answer, I feel like a lot of women have gone away from, this might be controversial. I know some people won't agree, but I think a lot of women have gone away from being feminine. And like a lot of people are really living in their like masculine energy, which is fine. I think you need to have both for
Mm-hmm.
certain situations in your life, but it's like too much. Like we're always like go, 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 hustle, hustle, like move up in your career, like make all this money, like take care of all of these things, that you're not really in your feminine anymore. And like you feel that blockage. You actually feel it. And like I've been there. I've been like, I feel weird and I don't know what it is. And all it took was for me to just like slow down. So I think I feel most like me as a woman when I'm just like resting and like slowing down. And like I feel like I look good. Like my hair is like done, but I'm not like too done up trying to impress anyone. I'm just like chilling with like tea or coffee, and I'm slowed down and rested.
Mm,
I think that that's when I feel
yeah.
That's a good
most.
one.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's tapping into like me as a child and me what I liked to do as a
Mm,
child. I'm an animal
yeah.
lover. I love animals. I'm very nurturing as well, but I'm nurturing towards animals and like dogs. Not that I'm not towards people, but I
Yeah.
mean, I just, that's what I gravitate to. So I think I feel most like a woman when I'm connected to my little girl
Mm,
or like my childhood
yeah.
self, and that's me being with animals, being in nature, grounding myself, kind of just like laying in the grass with my dogs around me. So that's when I feel most like a woman. But I'm curious to our viewers and our audience, like when they would too, because there's a lot of different answers out there.
Mm, yeah, the inner child stuff is really interesting. Like I can relate to that too. And like with the feminine energy, like it's this point is the fact that like when I was kind of teaching this and we were looking at it because we were looking into like, we live in such a masculinized world where it's go, go, go and
Yeah.
hustle culture, and bringing like being able to flow in the feminine. And like I'm also coming from a place where I try and work in like my feminine state, and things just flow a lot easier. Like
Mm-hmm.
your intuition like stands out so much more, the opportunities are so much more aligned. And when we're like in that hustle, like and grind in that masculine energy all of the time, it can really drain us and deplete us as
Yeah.
women. And I think obviously there's absolutely a balance, because if we lived in our feminine flow state all of the time, we'd be getting nothing done, like constantly.
True.
So
So true.
we need masculine, otherwise we wouldn't get anything done.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like how we feel most as a woman, that kind of like nurturing our inner child, like resting, slowing down, surrendering, all of that is like what our feminine deeply craves. So if we
Yeah.
actually just listen to like that as like when we feel most as a woman, we're actually like nurturing our feminine energy, and like that's what we innately crave like as women. And
Right.
so like even just like dancing and like movement and like you know, all those things that just make us feel good about ourselves is
100%.
as women, you know.
And like for someone, let's say, who like loves to work out and lift heavy weights, like not that that's like more in your masculine, but like that's like someone like me. Like I love to strength train, but then I'm like, I want to take some time and do like yoga and flow and like just adding those little sprinkles of just like flow. I don't know how else to describe
Yeah.
it, is really cool. So anyways, great prompt. So thank you for sharing that on your socials, because I think that's great to think about. But I kind of want to get into more about understanding cycle syncing, because it's something that we all hear about all the time. I've read the book In the Flow. I know a lot of other people have, which explains it like pretty good. But again, it's just like a word that kind of floats around. So can you explain a little bit more what exactly cycle syncing means and is? I know you describe it as like your inner compass or a woman's inner compass, but what does it mean, and how can women actually use it to optimize their health?
Yeah, so like cycle syncing for me, and like something, and when I originally kind of got into this, was tracking my cycle and really understanding my phases, and also working with my phases of my cycle. So when you're in your menstrual phase, it's all about really resting and like learning to like nurture yourself and honor that state. And as we flow through, you know, our energy picks up, and learning to flow with those hormonal fluctuations that happen, and just really honoring that. And I think the word cycle syncing, you know, you can obviously cycle sync your, you know, your nutrition, the way you train. So like, you know, for example, you'd be doing yoga, Pilates in your menstrual phase, you'd train in your follicular phase, and like people cycle sync like that. And I see a lot of talk about it, especially on TikTok, and like how amazing it is. And I just think truly it's about cultivating like that deep awareness and like understanding your body's signals and actually just listening to them. And honestly, tracking is so important, and especially for cycle syncing, like you need to understand where you are in your cycle, and you need to be like actively aware of that. Obviously, there's so many amazing apps, but I think sometimes it doesn't go into that deep state. Like when I first got into this work and I got into menstrual cycle awareness, I was like journaling on it. I was tracking like in quite depth. But then again, my other side of like things when I think about this is that, you know, sometimes people can get like really obsessive with this kind of work. And it actually is counterintuitive to us as women, because it actually just puts pressure on us. It overwhelms us. And at one point, I definitely felt like I was trying to sync everything and work everything around my cycle. And it's kind of counterproductive, to be honest. You really just need to what works best for you. So I would say it's more just about understanding you and your cycle and developing that awareness, because I mean, we're all so different as well, which is another thing, you know, we're not the same like individuals at all. So that would be my take. On it, but also I love all the books, you know, like In the Flow, it's great. I've got quite a few book recommendations, but yeah.
I think to your point, before we go into like the different phases of the cycle, what I've been doing, because I got there, I was literally, I'm 28 right now, and last year I realized what the different phases of my cycle were, which is like nuts. I did not know, like I just knew I got my period, and then like the time before my period I felt a little shitty. And that's it.
And then
like,
after you feel like
and then after I felt great. But I didn't know the different phases. So now that I'm starting to learn about it, and to your point about like doing what's best for you, something that I do that's been working is like when I wake up in the morning and I look at my to-do list, including what I need to do at the gym, at work, for the podcast, whatever, I like measure my energy for the day. I like think, and I'm like, how energized am I right now? Like based on where I'm at in my cycle, and I go from there. I don't know if that's a great tip or way to do it, but I really liked your point about saying like everyone's different. Like you can't necessarily go by the book exactly, because we're all different. You might have like really heavy PMS. I might not. So, you know.
Totally. And like, I mean, with cycle syncing, like especially with work, like this is something that I just naturally do now. It's like, especially,
Yeah.
I wouldn't really, plan any meetings that are going to take a lot out of me, like in my menstrual phase. And to be honest with you, like my cycle syncing during my period is like do nothing and rest.
Yeah.
Like that would be my cycle
Which
syncing.
is fair. Same
because
here.
it's so important. And like we really equate, I think, rest to like laziness, and we always feel so guilty, and it's just not. It just shouldn't be the way.
No,
I resonate with that a lot, and that's what I was talking about at the beginning of this episode, because I this week I'm on my menstrual cycle.
On your period?
On my period. On my period. Sorry.
Love
I'm
that.
on my period, and I just started a new job, and I was like, okay, I kind of feel like shit. Like at my new job, I feel great, but like I don't want to go to the gym this week. Like I haven't been this whole week, and yesterday I was like, I did not gym. I had soccer on Monday, whatever. I'm like, but I did not gym this whole week, and I felt so shitty about myself. I was like, how? Like I had no like grinta, I call it, like no
Yeah.
like energy, no motivation to like go to the gym and work out. And I was like, I hate that. Like, why do I feel that way? But then again, talking to my friend, she's like, you're on your period, just chill. Like just go with the flow and go with your body. And I feel like a lot of women and a lot of people have trouble with that, like trouble with just doing nothing and just kind of like letting yourself be in that state. Because I do equate sometimes, I'm trying to get out of it, but I do equate resting with laziness sometimes for myself. I'm like, I feel lazy. I'm not productive. I need to be doing this. I need to be working out. I need to be doing that. But it's like, it's okay to have that moment to just like relax. So I think it's important for women to realize that.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think you've said it like so perfectly, because I think the way in which the world thrives is that like we've been saying, that go mode, that hustle,
Mhm.
and like it's like we've been made to feel like we're lazy, but actually like your body is like working so amazing, like what you're actually doing. If you really deep it and think about like how much work your body's putting in, I now try and look at it more as like I see my body as like I just want to like hug myself and be like, you're doing amazing, girl, because
Yeah,
like you are. And so
literally.
rather than seeing like, do you know what, I'm not going to the gym, it's like, well, I'm not going to the gym because I'm on my period and I'm honoring myself. I'm looking after my body, and this is self-care right now. Like this is actual
true.
self-care. And it's so good to just like reframe that, but it also takes practice, because we don't just, because of the way the world is, like we don't just initially think that, but when we start to like reframe it as real self-care, and just honoring what our body actually needs, and you'll be surprised, I think, when you do honor yourself, that when you are in your like, ovulation and you are in your summer phase, like you will be able to do like so much more, and you'll be so much on your game because you allowed yourself to go through that rest period.
So speaking of ovulation phase, all of that, can we break down the different like phases of a woman's cycle, and like the association, maybe like a one word association
Okay.
with like how generally like a woman may feel at that point?
Yeah.
Can I add? Can you also maybe add like what the best thing to do and maybe the worst thing to do when you're in that phase?
Objectively.
Okay.
Like I know everyone's
Yeah.
different, but
Okay, so firstly, we've got a menstrual phase, which we all know that's when we bleed. This is our period time. So that is usually about day 1 to about 5. Everyone's different. But so this is, I like to refer to them, and I think this is a really great way, especially for people who are just getting into this, as like the seasons. So menstrual phase would be equivalent to like our winter, and we'll call it our inner winter. And if you think about that, like in our inner winter, we want to like, nurture ourselves.
that's
We want to
interesting.
like rest, and it really correlates perfectly. So I would say menstrual phase, period, rest. You don't want to be doing anything high energy. You don't want to be like going out socializing, but also this is so super objective, and to the point where if that's actually what you feel like you want to do it, whatever feels good for you. But as a kind of whole, and as we're talking, it's like it is more for, resting and nurturing ourselves. And then we go into our follicular phase. And this is from about day 5 to about 13. But everyone's different again. And we'll refer to this as inner spring. So again, very similar. Like if you think about springtime, this is when we start to bloom. And we kind of start to come out of that, like, soothing, like nurturing, like resting state of being, and we come into more of like a higher energy. And so that would be kind of how I would describe the inner spring, the follicular phase. So higher energy. And this is when you're probably going to want to start like getting yourself like out there again. I would say in your menstrual phase, it's very good to do things like yoga and, light kind of movement. But then in your follicular, like, you can start maybe, you have the energy, go for a run. Like that's kind of where we're at. And then we'll move into our ovulation phase. So this is actually like the real like key to our cycles. And a lot of us pin it on our periods, but it's actually ovulation. So true. So this is when like the egg's being released, okay? So this is like the big moment of the whole thing. And usually this is about day 14, but everybody is so different. And your app might tell you it's day 15 or day 14, but this is why understanding cervical fluid as well is so important, because the app is just guessing, okay? Like you don't actually know, and everyone's different. So I'll say like day 13 to kind of like day 16, 17 of your cycle, depending. Okay. And this is like, you're going to have like the good makeup days, like you're going to be feeling your best, you're going to be confident, like this is when, and sadly it's the shortest phase, which I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you do that to us? But yeah, no, this is really about cultivating that energy that you've really like picked up on throughout your cycle and from follicular into ovulation. But I think sometimes we can push ourselves a little bit too much in ovulation, because the reality is very soon we're going to dip into our luteal, and this is when we're kind of coming back into ourselves, and our body is preparing for either pregnancy, and if pregnancy doesn't occur, it's preparing for the next cycle to happen. And so our body is like, going through that process. And this is why in luteal, I think a lot of women this is this phase that people struggle with the most, kind of like the PMS phase, and like kind of if people struggle with like PMDD, this is when it happens in the lead up to the period. So also in autumn, and it's really just about preparing ourselves for the next period, but also it can be accompanied with all of the things in association with PMS. So that would be a real good, I love the seasons. I think it really helps, to be honest.
I like that. That actually, that was great. That helped me. I feel like it's like so intuitive, because it's like your period is nature, and like you explaining it like that, like makes so much sense. It's so simple, but it makes so much sense. And it's crazy, like when you actually like hear someone explain it in full like that, like the things that go on in our body every single month is actually wild. So to think that every single day is going to be the exact same for us, we're going to have the same energy, we're going to be able to wake up at the exact same time and like do it's just not realistic. And like, I'm really, I don't know, I'm into all this like wellness podcast stuff, whatever. But like a lot of the time I need to like take a step back and be like, this is a lot of like, again, no shade, whatever, a lot of men talking about like what works for them and like what other people should do. But it's like, how can women do that if like we're literally different from week to week? So
true.
It's funny too, because in ovulation, I honestly feel like I can do anything. I feel like confident. I feel so hot. I'm like, oh my God, I look so good. And then when luteal hits,
I'm in luteal right now. I'm just like,
my nose looks bigger. I look in the mirror and I'm like, why the fuck is my nose 10 times bigger than it was yesterday? Why is my face puffy? Like, I just look like a different person. I don't know if it's just perception or if it's actually like the hormones in your body like doing something to my nose.
No, it's
but I'm like, wait.
It's so true. Have you seen on TikTok, there's this like trend that's been going around recently that it's like me and my ovulation phase versus me and my luteal phase. And it'll be the face. And the face will change, and it will be like to do with like water retention, and it will be to do with like it absolutely has an effect. And like going back on kind of like when it comes to men, like men literally have a 24-hour hormonal cycle. So like they're like ready for like work in the day, like up, and then they're down at night, and it's perfect. But for women, it's like this whole thing, this whole cycle, like our seasons, like nature blooms like 25% of the year. So like, why do we expect ourselves to bloom 100% of the year? It's just like we are so correlated with nature. Like,
So speaking of PMS symptoms, given your expertise, as a menstrual cycle coach and an educator, what would you think? Well, firstly, I'd love to know what what all of our worst PMS symptoms are. And then from there, kind of explain like what are some strategies that we can do to I don't want to say mask the symptoms because we should just let them be, but more
Yeah.
like manage them, you know?
Mhm.
So what's your like PMS symptom?
So my biggest PMS symptom used to be, so it used to be insomnia. So my
Mm,
biggest issue used to be period insomnia, and I'd get
interesting.
it leading up to and on my period. And yeah, that happened for quite some time. Before I really got a handle on my menstrual cycle, but like I really struggled with that. And I also used to struggle with day one cramps really badly. Like day one was the worst day for me.
Mm,
But I say used to because, and this is something that I kind of touch on often because I think when people find out, they're like really interested by it. But I actually recently, it was about a year ago now, actually, I decided to go on the coil. So this the hormonal coil at contraception, birth control.
okay.
So I had been on the pill for so long. Didn't work for me. It was masking my symptoms. I was like 13. It didn't work. And I came off for about 4 years. And I was completely natural. And I think for so long, there was so much shame around contraception. And I think now it's like, natural is the way, it's the best way. And from my perspective, I think, yes, I understand what people are saying. And like, I totally agree, especially when you're putting women as young as 13 on the pill to mask
Yeah.
symptoms. They're growing up and they could have PCOS, they could have endo, and they don't realize, and they're on the pill all up until that point, until they're in their late 20s. And it's like, and that's an issue. That's a real issue. But if you've got somebody who has been diagnosed with something, or you've got somebody who has gone and done the work, and it's actually like an active choice that's genuinely going to benefit them. And I think there's a real like a way for contraception to actually make a difference in somebody's life. And so when I decided to go on the coil, I had done so much research. My cycle was in such a good place. I was very regular. I have no underlying conditions, and I'd done quite a lot of the work in the past. And a lot of research. Like I've read a million books, and like I would not go on the pill and I would not go on the injection. But the coil, the IUD, is a little bit different. And since then, I have zero PMS
It's
issues
amazing.
Wow.
at all, like completely.
And I feel
But
like it gives you your power back too when you're able to like choose what you want to do for yourself as
Yeah.
opposed to being like 13, 14, 15, whatever, and being like, oh, here, use this. And you're like, okay. So now you kind of like made that conscious choice. You did the research and like you took that power back to be able to choose what you want for your own body. So
yeah, no, I
I love
think
that.
like that is such an important part of it, because like you say, like we are literally just like forced. And even I think that's why the awareness now is so important, because I meet women, who are my age, older, who are like, well, they told me I had to start this, or they told me I had to come off this and then go straight back on. And I'm like, who told you that? And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
the doctor just told me this is what I needed to do. And I'm like, well, have you ever sat with yourself, like what you actually want in your body, what you've like, have you done your own research, your own awareness? And it's like, no, I'm just being told like this is what's
Yeah.
right for my
Yeah.
own body. And
Yeah.
that whole journey of me going on, the coil, like at some stage in my life when I know it's not right for me, like I will come off and I'll make that
Right.
conscious decision. It was in no one else's hands. It was in my hands. And yeah, everyone is so different. And it's like, so because my friend went on the coil very similar time and it just did not work out for her at all. And that is the story of like a woman's life. Like it's just so
Yeah.
different for everyone. But for me, like I went through that, and I went through that conscious decision making myself and deep awareness, and it worked out so well for me. And I think it was because of that like deep work. And I think such a reminder for women, because there is a lot of shame around it, and like especially like natural is being pushed, like this is what we should do. But in so many instances, like especially if somebody is suffering with something like endometriosis, like the coil can be like really life changing actually, if it's used correctly and it's not used to mask.
I like that because we were going to ask you some misconceptions about like
Yeah.
all of this. And I think that is a misconception is like now with this like hyper fixation on like wellness in this era that we're all in right now, I feel like, as you said, the natural is being pushed, but I guess a misconception sort of is like you need to do what's best for you. Like maybe natural is what's best for you, or maybe not. But
Yeah.
what is your PMS symptom?
Irritability, 100%.
Yeah, I'd agree.
My moods, I get really bad mood swings. I'll be very, very high, energetic, singing, laughing, and then one thing, and I'm just like, you pissed me, like you just pissed me off. Like it's really up and down, which, and like all jokes aside, like don't make a joke about this, but it has put a little bit of like tension within relationships, my sister, my mom, friendships. Like I can feel sometimes I'm like, I think I'm just being like too mean or like too much. I honestly don't mean to be. It just like happens. And that's probably my biggest is irritability.
I think a lot of people have that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, especially like, do you lead from your emotional like state?
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah. So I also lead from an emotional state. And I think especially that can really like correlate the irritability. Like, to be honest with you, I would say I actually suffered with quite bad like mood swings, irritability, definitely 100%. But yeah, like, did you want me to, should I touch on a little bit of like kind of tools and like kind of go down that route a little bit?
Yeah.
Because so like as a whole, like, for PMS, I would say the 4 key things we want to think about is like sleep, stress, environmental toxins, and inflammation. So like and this is why it's so related to like gut health issues, IBS, because that's obviously inflammation. And like PMS and inflammation are like besties, like they work together really well. But we really want to like to reduce the inflammation. It's like reduce the stress, alcohol. Like if you are, drinking a lot of alcohol, when I was a teenager and I was dealing with a lot of issues, health issues, I was consuming a whole lot of alcohol, and it really just doesn't help at all for inflammation. It's really bad. Smoking, lack of exercise, sleep. So sleep patterns, sleep routine, that is so, so important. And environmental toxins. So this is something that I touch on because it's so important, but we kind of sometimes just like pass over it a little bit. So endocrine disruptors are like, they are like hormone, like, endocrine disruptors that live in like our like chemicals, our makeup, like anything, like our water, like all of the things that are around us in our environment. They're toxins that act as hormones. And so, for example, all of the things that we're putting on our body. So in the world that we live in, like TikTok, and there's constantly new things, new products, want to get all of these new amazing things, but actually majority of these things are bad for you. They're bad for your hormones. And I always say this, that when we are putting things on our skin, so our skin is our biggest organ and it absorbs everything. And so all of the makeup we wear, the tan we wear, the perfume, like my biggest tip is if you are spraying perfume directly onto your skin, like don't do it. Spray it onto your clothes, because as soon as you spray it, like people, like you spray it onto your skin, you don't realize like that's going into you, and it's affecting your hormones. And so I say, if you have bad PMS, like think about all of the candles you're lighting in your house, think about the makeup, think about the tan, think about the products. And there's amazing things now out there called like, there's like the Yucca app, and there's other similar ones out there. And you can scan everything, like from food to the makeup to all the products. And I think even like cleaning products, we don't think about it, but like constantly, like the bleach, the sprays, it's a whole thing.
Oh my God. I am like, I rave about the cleaning products because our mom, she lives with our mom, and I moved out a couple years ago, and like my mom obviously means well, but she was like obsessed with cleaning. So she would always buy cleaning products, like just like the regular ones off the shelves. And I don't know, as I started getting into wellness, I started digging deep more into these cleaning products. And I'm like, these are so bad. And our dogs are like walking on the floor. Okay, this isn't about dogs, but still, like our dogs are walking on the floor. Whatever. Anyways, we're sleeping in the sheets that are being cleaned with Tide, and like it's going into our skin. And I tell my mom, she doesn't, it's like, some people just don't get it. I think like they're just, it's like, it's just what they know. So it's hard to kind of like drill in, but I agree with that. I think that like all of these cleaning products, like Febreze, all the
Glade, the Glade plugins.
The plugins is so bad. So bad.
So
See? Now maybe we'll show her this podcast clip and be like, look, it's coming from someone who studies this, an expert in this. Like, it's bad. But
Yeah, like, and if you think about like when, like I think about like back when like I was younger and when like this kind of education just wasn't about like at all. And so
right.
if you think about like when we're younger, like the stuff that they used to put on, like, cleaning our bed sheets, and we were like 11, 12, and I'm like, this is when our hormones are like, this is when we really
Yeah.
need to be focused on this stuff, and we're putting so much, and they just didn't have the understanding like we do
No.
now.
No.
So now it's like, yeah, minimal the better. Like, I just try to, like, I'm very conscious, but obviously, we wear makeup, like tan, like we get it. Like, we're not like trying to completely like, no, we're not perfect.
I
And
think
that
if you
is,
pick a couple things,
yeah,
like you're good.
just being consciously aware, like, do you know what? I'm not going to buy that candle. Like, I'm going to get a soy wax candle instead, or I'm not going to
Yeah.
buy the Febreze and the Glade like plugins. And I'm going to
Yeah.
scan between deodorants, and I'm not going to spray like hairspray and deodorant, and I'll use a roll on. Like, all of those things just add up, and they make such a difference. If you are someone who struggles with PMS, like, definitely check out your environmental toxins. But yeah, like stress. Okay. So like managing stress is so important. Such a big one for me, but like yoga, meditation, breath work, body work, like somatics. Like, if you have any like stored trauma in your body, this is also going to show up in like PMS symptoms, especially if we're dealing with like the womb space. And a lot of women will have trauma from like things that they have experienced in their lives, especially if it is related to like your womb space and that like healing center. It will show up. And doing the deep work, like the breath work and like the body work and somatics, is like really going to help with that for sure. But then my biggest thing, so like magnesium is like the best supplement
Oh, I love magnesium.
for women. Yeah, like magnesium's amazing. Like, you can find magnesium like nuts, seeds, leafy greens. Dark chocolate also contains a high amount of
perfect.
magnesium.
Yeah.
So like I've switched to dark chocolate purely because it's better, and like I try not to, but sugar is also like, quit the sugar. That was another thing. And quit the caffeine as much as you can. Like, I've been drinking
That's so
decaf.
hard for me.
Oh, do you know, like, that is the biggest one I think for so many women, I find, is the caffeine. But I switched to decaf like quite a while ago, and I also drink a lot of matcha. And matcha's like got caffeine in it, but it's different the way it kind of like shows up in your body. And the same with I drink coffee, but it's mushroom blend, so it actually counterbalances the caffeine, and like that's actually way better for you than because it's like actually got good benefits and like properties that you're drinking rather than just the high dose caffeine. And also, if you're struggling with like insomnia, like the caffeine and the sugar, a lot of women, especially if they deal with things like PCOS, like sugar is a big one to really cut. And I know cravings is like,
I know it's bad. It's bad, the cravings. I feel like coffee is like, that's hard for me. But I want, like, could you cycle that too, you think? Like, if I'm leading up to my period and I know I'm in luteal and I know I'm about to PMS, or like this is the time where I would, maybe that's when I drink decaf.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is
that makes a lot of sense, because especially if you're someone who like does deal with like PMS symptoms, like even like especially insomnia and stuff, I would 100% recommend doing decaf in the lead up to that time, like luteal, menstrual, for sure. I think that would make such a difference. And honestly, decaf anytime, it's like make a difference to start like cutting it out.
I need
slowly.
to try that.
Yeah.
Like, give it a go, because you might be surprised. I think sometimes it's like a mental game. We think we need it, but maybe we
It's true.
don't.
It's like placebo.
Yeah, very much true. And a couple of like, so there's more like kind of other things such as like TENS machines. I don't know if you've got one of those TENS machines, or you've used them for like cramps.
I don't know what the
TENS machine. So they're like it's like a little machine you can like stick onto your like womb space, and it sends messages into your like body that's like almost like electric pulses, and like it like kind of basically, I don't know what the science behind it, but your brain it will trick your brain to like not focus on the cramps. So if you struggle with cramping, and because the brain will like feel the electric shock, so it like almost switches something. So it is. I've used one before, and I find them really beneficial. castor oil packs as well. Like you can get them like on
Mm,
Amazon. They're really good for like inflammation.
okay.
Ginger, drinking ginger is really good for inflammation. Also like Epsom salt baths, like magnesium salt baths if you're
Ooh, that's a
struggling.
good
Like
one.
they're lovely to have in your luteal phase, like when you're kind of PMSing into period. Like they're great. But yeah, they would be like my bulk PMS tips.
That was great. There was a lot of things in there I did not know,
Yeah.
Too
especially the
much.
environmental factors. Like that was good.
Yeah.
Um, last thing I kind of want to touch on is safe period products and accessibility. So the reason why is because I had this not incident, but like this occurrence when I went to the drugstore. I started using organic tampons just because like one day I randomly like looked at the back of like the big brand tampon, and again, this is just me personally. I'm not shitting on anyone who decides to use like these big name tampons, but I felt like what was in these tampons that we're literally putting inside our body was a bit crazy. So I was just like scared to continue doing that. So when I went to the drugstore one day to get my like typical organic tampons, I looked on the shelves and like there was none there. Like the only organic tampon brand that they carry wasn't there. And it just kind of pissed me off because I was like,
Mm,
this whole shelf is filled with like these big name brands that are just like not
yeah.
good. Like they're just not good. And I can't get organic tampons now. I have to like go to different, I don't know. It was just like upsetting. And I'm like,
Mm,
and they're so expensive. So like
yeah.
if you can't afford, if you want to put into your body like a clean product and you can't afford it, it's like you have no choice but to put the shitty
Mm,
one in, you know? So I
yeah.
just want to get your take on that. Like
Mm.
what is your take between like conventional tampons versus organic or other things like cups or anything like that? I haven't dove deep into like cups or any alternatives, but I'd love to know your perspective.
For me, I've never been somebody who's used tampons. It's something
Okay.
that's a personal preference. I was always somebody that used pads, but like the thought of like tampons, like it was just uncomfortable for me. And like
Hmm.
you're so right, they're so not great ingredients, and like it's not good to be like putting that. It's totally causing issues, like for sure, especially non-organic. And a lot of the
Yeah.
times as well, like tampons, like to be honest, it's like they've only just started testing them with like actual blood and like really seeing if they work, because so many women like I speak to, they're like, I'll leak through, it doesn't work
Yeah.
properly. Like, and I'm just like, they don't function as they should function. And the reason is it hasn't been tested on women like so many other things. Like, a lot of the time, like men are behind these big period brands. Like,
Yeah, which
no
is like
joke, like Always and stuff like that. I feel like there are men CEOs sat at the top, and it's like, make it make sense. And so
yeah.
like do like the research into the brands. But like for me, like period pants are like the best invention in the world, because you can reuse them, like especially if you can't afford to buy like, you know, the organic tampons. um and I would say that period pants, you can obviously like, you know, and there's some amazing brands out there, like off the top of my head, like Snugs is a really great brand. And
Snugs.
they're really like nice knickers. Like they're not like, you know, like ugly period pants. Like they're actually designed like by
I'm looking
women,
it
they're
up.
for women. And they look really quite attractive. And so like sometimes I think with the
Mm.
period pants,
Hmm.
people can think, oh, maybe they're not like, you know, period pants can feel a bit much, but you can reuse them, like you just wash them. And for me, like
Interesting.
so much more comfortable. And so if I was going to go down that
Hmm.
route, like 100%. But also obviously there's cups out there, there's discs. For me, period pants is the one. Um, I've never used a cup, also because I'm on the coil. It's not good to use cups or discs because
Mm.
the suction when you pull it out can actually pull out the coil. So you really need to be
Oh,
careful.
oh my God.
But you don't think about these things, and they don't really tell you these things. So
No.
it's really important. But another point, like I would say on the safer period stuff as well, as I think that like is so hard because there's so much like scarcity and fear around these things because we see so much. And I've worked with or spoken to women who have experienced like toxic shock syndrome and stuff, and it's really scary. But actually like the fear and the fear-based beliefs, like that scarcity can actually affect our pain. And like fear-based beliefs and that fear can
Yeah.
actually cause more pain. It causes more stress. It interferes with our, you know, our cycles. And so it kind of, again, is like counterintuitive. So
Yeah.
really like um I think sometimes you can get like caught up in that. But I think it's really important to really to not, especially for ourselves and like our overall well-being. And I know it's really hard because there's so much out there. But yeah, would definitely personally invest in some period pants as well.
I just looked it
Yeah.
up right now. These are actually really cute.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. When you first said period pants, I don't know why I was thinking of like pantaloons.
I thought like actual like
No, I was thinking of like pantaloons. Like,
what the fuck are pantaloons?
you know, like the ones that are kind of just like, they're like balloon pants with like the cup
What?
at the bottom. I don't know why I thought of like weird pantaloon pants, but these are like actual underwear.
These
so
are
like
cute.
you don't have to wear a tampon with it. Like you just use kind of free bleed.
You just free bleed. It's amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, like, and
Wow.
They're cute.
These are cute.
and they're super cute, and also like they're designed by women, like they're made so much better. Like I think you can probably get different for like different flows, which is also really helpful. But like also, yeah, you can just buy like a whole pack and then you just reuse them each cycle, and I just think it's the way forward, to be honest.
Well, thank you for that
Love
tip.
that.
I need to get me some of those.
Yeah, some period panties.
But before we ask you for resources and support from you, one last thing wasn't on our outline, but I kind of just want to ask. You mentioned PCOS, and I hear that about that a lot. I don't have PCOS. Fran doesn't have PCOS, but I know a lot of people who do, and that didn't know that they did until they had to like really push for like doctors or like medical professionals to see them and diagnose it. So
Yeah.
can you pinpoint like some symptoms that could be PCOS that like one wouldn't actually think would be that?
So if you're having irregular cycles, that is like such a pinpoint of PCOS. So like if you've been having cycles that are 35 days plus, so like 36-day cycles, and you've been having that all of your life, like that is a like sharp PCOS indicator.
Interesting.
Also, it's testosterone, like high levels of testosterone, like symptoms. So for example, facial hair, acne, all those like symptoms that you would relate to like high levels of testosterone in the body, and like kind of like greasy hair, or like I would say like also like people get like shoulder acne and stuff like acne all over the body. That's something that, or like on the chest as well. So like that's something that's also but very much similar, like, you know, high levels of testosterone. And I would say those two are the biggest like symptoms, like for sure, if you're dealing with irregular cycles. But I think it's hard because a lot of women actually do go to get diagnosed, or they've been dealing with irregular cycles, and they'll say like, I've had these irregular periods and for all of my life, and they'll test for high levels of testosterone to see, and it won't show up, and they'll be like, oh no, you've not got it. But that's actually not true. So you don't actually have to have high levels of testosterone to be diagnosed with PCOS. So if you had a scan on your ovaries, you might not have high levels of testosterone, but you might have abnormal looking ovaries on ultrasound, and that is an indication of PCOS. And I think it's kind of like really about pushing for that, because that those symptoms, and some, I've done a lot of research, but I've listened to a podcast, and one of the girls that was speaking who had PCOS, she really didn't display PCOS symptoms at all. Obviously weight gain, especially like if you're struggling to lose weight, like that is also a massive thing, but not necessary, because this lady, like, it really wasn't the case for her at all, which is why it was so difficult to diagnose, because she wasn't displaying the symptoms. But yeah, if you've got irregular cycles, for one, like if you've had that all of your life, like that is like a sharp indicator to look into it, and also to push for more testing, especially having a scan to really go over that, because your hormone levels might be fine and they might palm you off, and actually it is underlying and it is there. And PCOS patients, you know, they also have, you know, a high quality of eggs, so they have a lot of eggs, so they're like, oh, you're fine, you've got a lot of eggs, but actually the quantity, the quantity is high, but the quality is what the issue is. And so that can be a real issue, like later down in the line, like when you're looking to have kids and stuff like that, because they'll be like, you've got loads of eggs, you're fine, but actually the quality of the egg is what really matters, and that can really be an effect. So I would say it's really important to look into it. But the biggest thing with PCOS is insulin resistance, so that is why with the struggles with weight gain, so yeah, the insulin is resistant. So there's a lot of like medications that can help with that. And that's something that actually a lot of the time does need medicated, and there is, medication out there. So it is really important to, go and see someone who specializes in it. And actually it's really hard because over here it depends on the doctor, it depends on the gynecologist, it depends. But there is so many amazing people out there. There's so many amazing women doctors out there who are really focused. There's actually a podcast called She MD.
Yeah, I've heard of that podcast.
Yeah. And the lady on there, she's who's like one of the hosts. I can't remember. I think it's Dr. Ali Abadi or something. I think that's her name. She is an incredible doctor and really specializes in PCOS. So I would 100% watch some of her episodes specifically around PCOS, because they're great. And she gets some really great celebrity guests on that also have PCOS, and it's really interesting.
I could go on and on all day asking questions about this. So like, this is super interesting. But go ahead.
No, yeah, I guess for a little wrap up, where can people, our listeners, our viewers, find you if they want to reach out about their menstrual cycle, cycle support, PCOS? Like, just where can they find you and your resources?
Amazing. So you can find me on mostly my Instagram platform, which is Femm, so FEMM .collective. I'm also quite I do, like, most of the time I'm on LinkedIn these days, and I'm just Emily Todd on LinkedIn. And I post a lot on there actually more recently. But you'll be able to find everything in my Instagram bio. I also have a couple of freebies, like a tracker, a couple of free masterclasses. I've just done a new masterclass, a new course, a mini course on how to step into your feminine energy with confidence. And we do touch on like healing your cycle naturally as well. But I also later in this year will have a program coming out. So I haven't actually got like a full offering. I do work with one-to-one clients like when they come about, but yeah, I am working on an offering at the moment, which is really exciting. So if you check out my Instagram, it will all be like in my bio, like in my links. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
That's so exciting. Well, thank you so much, Emily, for explaining a lot to us. Like, honestly, there's so many good tidbits of information in there that I didn't even know. So I appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time.
We might need a part two.
Yeah, honestly.
Like, I have so many questions, but I'm like, okay, I know we need to wrap it up. But
no,
really great. So thank you.
So great. Like, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Okay, you guys, that was our episode with Emily. As she mentioned, if you need anything from her or want to check out her resources, her Instagram will be in the description. So check that out. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions for us, or like you like this type of episode, let us know, because we can have her on again. I felt like I could keep going and going. So yeah, thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and do all of that.